Welcome to Joshua 2415 Outdoors. All right, and welcome back to Joshua 2415 Outdoors. We are here at episode 2, and this one's going to be kind of an interview style format. Just going to have some questions for Mr. Brian Comer here on just advice or anything you want to give someone who is new and getting into hunting. What piece of advice you would have for them, stuff like that. So, without further ado, let's start off with this question. How long have you been hunting, and what got you started?
All right, Mark, I've been hunting I've been hunting for 49 years. And when I was 5 years old, I was allowed to... Yeah, I'm a dinosaur. We've covered that in the first one. When I was 5 years old, I was allowed to go along on the squirrel hunts with my father and my grandfather. And I was allowed to carry a 410 shotgun that was empty. And for the entire first season, I carried an empty gun with no ammunition. And the second year, I was allowed to carry one round at a time. And my dad carried the rest of them. And I was not allowed to load the gun until I was ready to shoot at a squirrel or a rabbit. And in the third year, when I turned 7, I was allowed then to have a pocket full of shells, and I was basically on my own. I would be dropped off and just, meet him back up at the truck when it got dark or we had our limit. And but when I started deer hunting in 1983, and what led me to that passion was a squirrel hunt, and I was squirrel hunting in a place called Coral Creek in Pope County, and I was with my dad and my grandpa, and we went up this ridge to an oak flat, and I was in between both of those guys, and a doe walked up to me, and she was just 5 or 6 yards in front of me, and I was standing there looking how beautiful that doe was, and all of a sudden I saw something else coming from behind her, and now, I was just a little boy, 6, 7 years old, and this buck walked up and walked in front of that doe and walked up. I could have probably stuck the 410 barrel out and touched him. He walked up so close. I could still see him just like it was yesterday. He was, to me, a massive 8-point buck, dark chocolate antlers. I could see his nostrils, still to this day, I could see his nostrils flaring, smelling, and his eyes blinking and his ears twitching. And there being only a few feet from that buck, I was just completely in awe of the majesty of that animal. And from that point on, I still squirrel hunted and rabbit hunted, but I was lost in deer hunting. I had to read everything that I could get my hands on, and I had to learn to deer hunt at that point. And in 1983, I was 13 years old. I was finally big enough to be able to pull a compound bow that was legal for the state of Illinois, and I started deer hunting that year.
Man, so what a passion you've developed just out of that first sighting of that buck and that doe and being that close.
Yes.
That's quite.
It was an incredible experience.
It's quite a story. It's quite an experience. I can only imagine being that close. I've never been that close to those animals outside of captivity.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and get into the next one. So with all that said, in your background and how long you've been hunting, what advice would you give to someone who is just getting started, someone who maybe just have an interest and wants to get into deer hunting and learning how to hunt and all that? What's the biggest piece of advice you give to someone just starting out?
Just starting out. With all of the social media and all of the TV shows on hunting now, do not get caught up in this. It has to be a trophy animal, a 5 or 6 year old buck, or you're not going to shoot it. Get some deer under your belt. Go enjoy the sport. Enjoy taking some animals. Enjoy the harvest. Enjoy the butchering that deer, teaching yourself how to do all of those things. If you can find a veteran hunter that's willing to take you under his wings, great. The thing is, nowadays, with all of this hype about trophy animals, people have become very secretive, and guys don't want anybody to have any access around their spots. They don't want the people that hunt the farms next to them to shoot animals that they don't deem to be worthy of being shot yet because they're not big enough or old enough. But when you start deer hunting, you pay for that tag yourself. And when you pay for that tag, that gives you the right to shoot any animal that you choose that is legal to harvest. Be happy with what you decide to shoot. If you're starting out and you don't want to shoot a deer until it's a big deer, I hope you have great luck. But, it's you either get really lucky for a big deer or you work really hard for a big deer. And I've got a lot of big deer on my wall, but I've also been doing this for 41 years. And, you take steps as you go, and you'll go from just, it's brown, it's down, a meat hunter, to everybody progresses differently. So do not get caught up in the hype. That is the main thing to me of what social media and the TV projects is what you have to do. Secondly, enjoy yourself. If you're not having fun doing it, you're not going to put a passion into it, and you're not going to really give it what you need to give it to be successful. But if you can find a veteran hunter that is willing to take you under his wings, then do that. If you can't, well, there's plenty of knowledge on several shows that even though they chase after trophy animals, they give you good quality advice on deer hunting, on setting up with the wind right, on conditions, on habitat. There's lots of good places that you can get information from, and then put that in your catalog in your head, and when you go out into the field, draw from that. With Google Earth, when I get a new property, even properties I've been on forever, I will go to Google Earth and I will look at the lay of the land, and I will find the funnels, the areas that will funnel the deer down. I'll find the thickest areas that I can find for the bedding areas. I'll find the food source, and I'll know all of these things ahead of time before I ever lay foot on a piece of property. So you have access to that. Even with public ground, if you're a new hunter and you're going to have to hunt public ground if you can't find private to get permission on, you can look at all of this public ground on Google Earth, and you can look and you can draw from the information that's on there and give you a starting point. And then go in, read the sign on the ground, look for old rubs, old scrapes, set up, and play the wind, and you will have the opportunity for success.
I think that's a pretty solid advice, especially for someone getting started out, having those fundamentals down, getting to know the area, scouting, all that good stuff. I think that's pretty solid advice, and not to get caught up in the trophy aspect of it, but just to enjoy being in the outdoors. I would say enjoy God's presence and experiencing all that He has to offer in His creation.
God did not make those animals for one to be considered a trophy and one not to be considered a trophy. God made those animals for us to utilize. And whether that's you want to go photograph them, or you want to hunt them, or you just want to watch them, or whatever that is, I want to hunt them and I want to eat them. And my family has been raised up on deer meat. I've raised both of my sons. As soon as they could gnaw on it with one tooth, they were eating deer meat. And each and every one of those animals, whether it was a yearling doe or whether it was a 160-inch buck, they were all trophy animals because God created them and gave me the opportunity to take them.
Agree. Also, very, very good, profound statement there as well. So, as we progress into these questions, some of them become more scenario-based, like this next one.
Okay.
So it's more of a scenario. So let's say you just found an area, all right, that you want to start hunting. And you kind of touched on this, but go a little bit deeper into this. So what are some signs that you would look for when you find that area that you want to hunt? This new area, you just got to it, you're starting to get scouted. What are you looking for when you go in?
First off, I'm going to Google Earth. Or with some of the different apps you have now, the hunting apps that give you the barometric pressure and give you the weather, and it gives you access to maps. And some of them have not only access to maps, but gives you access to parcels so that you can see who owns the property, to be able to go and get permission, see when you are on public ground and when you're about to cross off of it. First off, don't ever trespass on anyone. Someone is paying taxes on that ground, and it is their ground, so they deserve the common courtesy of not trespassing on them. And you can ask. If they'll tell you yes, great. If they tell you no, stay off of it. But when you go into a piece of property, the first thing I do is I look at it from the aerial. And then after I look at it from an aerial, I go in. If it's early enough in the year when I find a piece of property, I like to go into them after season is over, because the leaves are all still off. You can go in and you can see the sign, you can read the sign, you can see where the trails are, especially if there's a snow. If there's a snow comes on in late winter, early spring, go to the food sources, be it a crop field or be it an oak flat, and follow those deer tracks back to the beds. It tells you the whole story right there in the snow. It will lead you through everything that you need to see, and as you're walking those trails, whether you have snow or not, you follow those main trails coming off of your feeding areas and be looking for this past season's rubs, this past season's scrapes. And especially when I'm looking for rubs, I'm also looking for historical rubs, that places where deer have been rubbing for a period of years, and sometimes many years. You will see mature cedar trees, other trees that deer have been tearing up for years and years and years. And you know then that is going to be a core area when it comes back into the mid to late part of October, when bucks start tearing stuff up and they start getting geared up and the testosterone starts to raise and they start getting really ready for the breeding season. And those are areas that you can then go back into, and you've already done your work. You looked at it before the leaves were on, and you can pick trees. Go ahead and clean trees up. Get them ready to where when you go back in, all you have to do is put a stand up. If you have a climber, take a climber in early in the year and climb the tree. Cut any limbs out that need to be cut out of the way. Cut any shooting lanes that you can see from the aerial position once you're up there that need to be trimmed, so you don't have to do that when season comes in September or October, whatever state you're living in. And I also put my stands up starting in June, the ones that I do not leave out all the time. And I only leave a few stands out all the time, and on those stands every other year I replace the straps on them. Because I want to be 100% safe, and if I put a grandkid in a stand or I put a friend in a stand, I want to know that stand is secure. So you go in, read the sign. If you don't know how to read sign, I'm sure there are YouTube videos everywhere that will teach it, but we are also going to do YouTube videos as we go through the next few weeks that is going to show what we're looking for in a woods or field that has not greened up yet, to show you what to look for that will lead you to success.
Once again, solid advice. I have another. This next question is a two-parter, so we'll just get right into that. In your experience, when should you call, and how often? Is the part one.
Okay. I do not do a lot of calling until about the third week in October. If I see a buck prior to that, I hardly ever call to does. Sometimes I'll call to does just to see the reaction, because anytime you do call to a deer that you can see, then you read that reaction on that deer, the facial features, how they're reacting to it, how they turn their ears, their body language to it, and you just put that card back in your brain to be able to use later. Well, this deer reacted this way to this call, and at early season on does is a good way to do that, to see animals' reactions, or on young bucks. But the third week in October is when I'm going to start heavily grunting and rattling. Then I don't do it often, maybe once every hour if I'm not calling to an animal. But I don't do a lot of blind calling. Now, rattling, I will every hour or so I will rattle antlers. But most of the time, other than grunting along with the rattling sequence, I don't grunt unless I see an animal so that I can read his reaction and decide what steps to do next.
Perfect segue into the next part of this question.
Okay.
So, in your experience, which would you say is the most effective for calling in a buck? Would you say grunt, snort wheeze, estrus bleats, or just rattling antlers? Which do you find most effective?
If I could only carry one tool, it's going to be the grunt call. And my grunt call, it has a snort wheeze tube on top of it, but if your grunt call does not have a snort wheeze tube on top of it, it's very, very simple to do. You just make the blowing noise with your voice.
Example.
Just something like that.
I gotta have it.
It's just something like that. Just a quick blow with your lips kind of together and your teeth kind of gritted, and that is a noise that a deer makes when he is absolutely ready to fight.
So, sorry, that's kind of like the cheater way, because you say if you can only carry one call, but you're always carrying that snort wheeze on you.
You are, and I mean, I can grunt with my own voice, so if I was to forget a grunt call, I have that. I would rather use a grunt call because you have you can project more volume, you can control it a whole lot more. For years I didn't carry a grunt call at all, and then I saw the benefit of actually having a good quality grunt call. And everybody makes good grunt calls now, but I will take that grunt call, and if I just see a buck, I can hit that grunt call once. As long as I get his attention, then I can read from then what to do next. So to me, it's all about that grunt call. The rattling, I want my rattling antlers with me, but that grunt call is always going to be with me.
All right. That answers that nicely. So we'll move into the next question. Are mock scrapes absolutely necessary? In your opinion, do you feel like you absolutely need a mock scrape?
No, you do not absolutely need a mock scrape, but I absolutely love mock scrapes.
Yeah, this two-parter. So, and I feel like you're going to answer that, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask it. What benefits do you find when you set a mock scrape? And explain how to make a mock scrape.
Okay. I use a combination of scents. I use a scent that's a stick that's like a kind of like an underarm deodorant stick type thing that has the orbital glands in it, and the glands from around the bases of the forehead around the antlers, and I use those on the limb above where I want to build a mock scrape. Because the great thing about a mock scrape, you can make that animal step basically where you want him to step. For years, I trapped before I did anything, and through trapping, I learned how to make an animal that has free will to go anywhere step on an 1.5 inch steel pan when he could have stepped anywhere in the world. Well, I use the mock scrape as the same sort of tool. I use it as a trap for a whitetail. I build that mock scrape to where it's a close shot for me, and I build it to where I want the deer to stand. And I will generally try to build that to where the deer has got to come around, if he's going to work that scrape, come around to an angle that will give me the right angle that I want for the shot. So I think mock scrapes are wonderful tools, and I start them out in the summer with the orbital glands and those things on the limb, and I will take a stick or a rake or something with me. A lot of times I carry one of the small children's rakes. That's a little steel leaf rake, and you could take that and you can that or a limb saw, and you could just beat the fire out of the limb that's above where you want to scrape, so it looks like a deer has chewed on it and worked it with its horns, and then put that scent directly into those breaks and those frays in the bark. And then I rake out a good 2.5 foot circle underneath it. And early in the year, I start out with just a buck urine and a straight doe urine. And a lot of companies make what's called a scrape starter, and it's got a lot of other different scents in it, and I have used those. And I have had great success in the past few years with starting those mock scrapes, and then after you start them, when the deer find them, they absolutely take them over. And then you no longer have to go back and put scent in those or anything else. The deer are coming to those scrapes. They're used to coming to those scrapes. It's a central hub then. It is where everybody is coming to say, here I am, or to see who is here. And you just condition those deer to do what they're naturally going to do. They're going to build their own scrapes. But if you build a scrape where you want it, they will take that scrape over. And all the bucks in the area, including the does, they will come to that one scrape and deposit their scent and see who else was there. One of the best mock scrapes I've ever had was this past season, and because I had a cell camera on that, and every night here at work we were watching the bucks continually and the does coming and peeing in those scrapes.
They were tearing
it up, and after they lost their velvet and got to hard horns, we were seeing absolutely violent interactions with the limbs above it, how hard they were hitting the limbs with their antlers, and we were watching bucks actually meet up and fight at those mock scrapes during the nighttime while we were here at work. And if I ever had any doubt in a mock scrape, it was completely washed away
just by seeing those
by
pictures,
having cameras on mock scrapes.
Yeah. I believe I've heard you refer to the mock scrape as the social media for the deer.
It is. It really is.
And I could see where that'd be a thing. They're picking up all their scents from other deer. That's where they're all localized, and I could see why that becomes a pretty good analogy. Now we're back to another scenario question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so peak rut has passed, and you are entering the late season. We're talking, let's say, late December, early January, right? When there's not much activity in terms of breeding anymore. So, with that said, what, if anything, would you do differently late season than you are doing early on in the season?
Well, I'm actually doing the exact same thing in late season that I'm doing in early season. I'm hunting the food. And in the middle part of season is when I'm hunting doe bedding areas and places that does are going to hang out, because that's where the bucks are going to be. But after the majority of the does have been bred, the bucks, they're completely run down at that point. They've lost tremendous amounts of weight. A lot of them are severely injured from the fights they've been in. A lot of them, their antlers are broke up, and they've got gore holes and gouges all in them. And those animals know winter is coming, and they have got to get the feed bag back on and put weight back on and get their bodies built up to get through the winter time. So you just go back to the food, whether it's crop fields that have been harvested or whether it's acred flats, whatever food source that you have where you're going to be, those animals have to go back to that. And then when they go back to that, if there is still a doe that has not been bred, she'll keep coming in, and well, that's where she's going to be too. Yeah. She's going to have to go feed. So the best thing you can do still, even to get on a deer, on a buck, a good buck, or any kind of buck, is to be where the food is at. because they've got to come back to the food. And then when you're back on the food, when the does show up, if there is still a straggler doe that is just now coming back into heat, you're right there in the action still.
So, with that said, you emphasize the food. Now, I'm curious, what about a water source? Now, if you have a water source in your area that's pretty significant in size, one that you're sure they're going to, I'd say you're probably not going to have as much success as you would in with the food source. But if you're in an area where there's limited water and there's not as much, it's not as plentiful as if, say, you had a pond on the property or a lake or whatever,
Right.
But it's more of a small stream that may have drought every so often, and it's rare to have flow through there. Would you say then that you would have more success with a water source than you would a food source? Depending on the scenario.
Depending on the scenario, but in my experience, unless it was a season of a drought, I have not hunted the water source specifically. A lot of the places, all of the places that I hunt have got substantial creeks that run through them that are naturally fed, so they always have water in them. So I don't specifically hunt water, but it's also because I have no need to specifically hunt water. If I was hunting a piece of property that had limited water over a huge area and there was a pond there, of course the deer have got to come there for water.
Right.
So that could be a great success. But on the farms that I have always hunted, and even the public ground that I hunt, there's just ample water everywhere unless there is a drought. I can only remember one year that there was a severe enough drought that I specifically hunted one of the creeks but it was a heavy crossing. I would have been there anyway. But the deer did, as they came through that, every one of them would stop and drink from that flowing stream.
I think that also goes back into the whole funneling. Where are they going to funnel? If you've got an area that's got limited water,
Yes.
obviously at some point they're
Yes.
all going to funnel into that
Yes.
area and get water because they have to have water. Just interesting. Just something that I thought would be helpful to somebody if that's
It very well
something-
could be.
something they're looking to get in on a water source or whatever. Just knowing the lay of the land. Again,
if you hunting a piece of property that does not have a water source,
create one.
create one.
Yep.
I mean, if nothing else, take a kid's swimming pool and dig you a little hole to put it in and carry enough water in there to put it in it. It may be the draw that absolutely just makes everything go over the top for you. If I was hunting a piece of property that did not have water within a quarter mile, I'd be putting a water source in.
And then you can pretty much guarantee success
They would have to come to it.
because once they get used to that being there, they're going to keep going.
And
that
that's
water
the thing.
source.
Get used to being there. So when you're doing things like that, plan on them having enough time to get used to that. If you're going to put a water source in, put it in early enough in the year so that the deer have got all summer when it's dry and it's hot, that they know, hey, once they've found it, they can get comfortable coming to it. Put you a camera on it so that you can see what the deer do. It may take a month or so before the deer even start, messing with it. But if you've got a camera on it, whether it's a cell camera, I've only got a couple cell cameras. Most of my cameras are cheap Walmart cameras that just take the pictures. But once you have a camera on it and you can see what's coming to it and see the times they're coming to it and all of these things, then you can make decisions off of that then. But put that in early enough in the year for the deer to be used to it long before season comes. And if I was going to put a water source in, I would go ahead and not only put a camera there, I would go ahead and set my stand up for whatever the prevailing wind was going to be for the earliest part of season when the driest, warmest part of the season is, and have everything up to where I did not have to go back to that and the deer could just take it over.
There you go. There you have it. We'll wrap it up with this last question, which I feel is it's an important question, and one I think, I don't want to say the most important question of all these, but it's got significant value to it. And I think your answer to this one could really help someone. So, what mistakes have you made early on in your hunting career that you have learned from and has helped shape the man and hunter that you are today?
The amount of time that I spent doing it. Deer hunting particularly was an idol to me. Whether it was looking for antlers, collecting antlers, being in a tree, waiting on the next big deer to come by, or just the next deer that I'd have the opportunity to shoot. It was an absolute idol for me. So now I was always there for my family, and my family was hunting with me most of the time. But I spent in my earlier years way too much time investing in being in the woods and not investing in what God wanted me to do. And when I got my priorities straight, which is God first, my wife next, my children under that, and everything else falls in under that, it is a perfect umbrella of security. If you love your family, you put God first. Because if you put God first, He's going to protect your family. So if you just picture an umbrella, and that umbrella is God, you're the one holding that umbrella over your family. You as the man of that house, you are holding that umbrella of God over your family, and you're keeping everything else close to you under that. When you do that and you get your priorities straight, time is the most valuable thing that we possess. It's a thing that we get paid for at work. It's a thing that we make plans for on our vacations and everything else. And when we realize that time does not belong to us, we use it, but it does not belong to us. That time is a free gift given by a creator that loves us. And when we use that time the way that He wants us to in service to Him, the smaller amount of time that we spend actually hunting, fishing, whatever you do for recreation will be so much richer than spending every last minute that you could out there just for yourself. The smells are more intense. The colors are brighter. The daybreaks bring a new meaning to you. The sunsets bring a new meaning. The interactions with animals, everything is so much richer after I put God first and started doing what He wanted me to do, instead of just spending every waking minute to be in the woods for what? For just my own satisfaction of saying, I set 200 hours this year, or whatever, I set over the course of season. I would rather get to hunt a few times a week and devote my time to God and then my family than to hunt every day trying to be successful at what? God will give you everything that you need if you just give Him His time back. It's His. He gives you the very breath that you're going to take right now. The breath that I just took to say these words, it was a free gift from Him. He could take that away at any moment. So why then, after I realize that time does not belong to me, would I not utilize that time to glorify the Creator that gave me that time? And when I got that straight, that is when my success, even the quality of the animals as far as size and age, and I don't necessarily trophy hunt. I deer hunt. Now, as I've got older, I like if I'm going to fill my buck tags, I like for them to be an older deer most of the time, or a bigger deer. I like antlers. I love antlers. But if I do what God wants me to do, I've seen the success. My walls are full of bucks. That's either been mounted or European mounts. I love walking into my living room and sitting down and just looking at all of these mounts and all of these antlers, and no longer do I look at them as, oh, what a trophy, what a trophy, what a trophy. I look at each one of them as a blessing given by God for being of service to Him. And so that was my biggest lesson that I've learned in 49 years of hunting and 41 years of bow hunting, is my time goes to God first. It doesn't matter if you sit out there every day of the week from daylight till dark. You may be lucky and a deer walk by you, a big deer walk by you. But I would rather have the hand of God leading what's going to happen to my hunt and go home empty-handed and be given something richer through that hunt than to me go set 7 days a week and kill a Boone and Crockett.
Gosh, I that resonates so much. I agree with that so much, because many times have I been hunting or fishing, been out there in the wilderness, been out in His creation, is the time that I have felt most at peace, most fulfilled. When you just sit there and take that all in, you don't need to even see an animal. You don't need to catch a fish. Whatever you're doing, just being out there when you can soak yourself in the midst of that creation, how fulfilling it is for your soul just to be out there. That I agree with that completely. That has been my experience anytime I've been out there. I love it.
I tell you one other thing. I mean, one of the greatest aspects to the success that I have had, it's God first, absolutely. But it's my wife next. My wife knows that the time that I spend in the woods, even though I don't spend as much time as I used to, that time that I spend in the woods is time that I'm getting closer to God. I'm reading His Word. I'm praying. I'm talking to Him. I'm experiencing His creation. And my wife has been my biggest supporter. We've been married for 35 years. She's absolutely the love of my life. She's my best friend. And she supports me hunting. She hunts with me a lot. She used to hunt with me a lot more. But she is my biggest supporter of being able to go and do these things, because she knows the whole family is going to benefit from the experience that God gives me, whether it's peace of mind or whether it's the time to just study His Word. Whatever it is, most of the messages that I write, that I preach, are written from a deer stand. You know, those ideas, those inspirations come from being there and God showing me something out in His creation that He wants me to share with someone else. So, you know, if you've got a wife that supports you hunting and fishing, especially if she joins along with you, you can't ask for more than that. That's just amazing. But if you've got a wife that knows that the whole family is going to be better because you're connecting with God, not because you're just going to spend time in the woods. If you're going to do it to connect with God and the whole family is going to benefit from it, you know, she makes sure that I have all the time that I choose to go to the woods. Never complains one time.
That's awesome. I think that's going to wrap it up. That's the last question I have. I think we hit a lot of important points that covers probably not all, but mostly someone new to hunting, I feel like, is going to benefit from a lot of
It'll get you started.
But yeah, I've definitely not been hunting that long, and it's been off and on, and I've been out of the game for a while, so getting back into it, especially bow hunting. I've never bow hunted, so this is my first year that I've gotten to do that, and my goodness, I am already obsessed.
I know.
I am obsessed. I want to bow hunt. I don't even care if I ever pick up a gun again. I want to bow. I want to learn more about it. I feel like, gosh, and hearing your story from the last episode about the flight of the arrow, and growing up hearing Ted Nugent talk about the mystical flight of the arrow, my goodness, what a good time to be a bow hunter.
Amen.
In my opinion.
Amen.
Gosh, I'm excited. I'm excited about this coming season. I'm excited about getting as much hunting in as I can. At the end of the day, for me, it's providing for my family. It's putting food on the table. It's grocery hunting, but in the outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, thanks for sharing your experiences. Thanks for sharing your wisdom in your old age. That's much appreciated. I hope that everyone who listens to this gets something out of it, whether it be the hunting advice or if it's inspiration in your faith, because I felt like both of those things happened. It certainly inspired me, and thanks for that. I thank God that we are able to do this podcast. We're able to do the YouTube videos, get out there, go hunting, sharing His presence. It's all such a blessing.
And to do it together.
Yep. Gosh, it's amazing. So thanks again for joining us for episode 2. We hope to catch you in episode 3. And again, we hope you take something from this. I feel like there's a lot to be taken from this. So thanks again, and we will catch you in episode 3. God bless you.
God bless.